Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we will be reacting to the Alice in Borderland OVAs. So this might be a surprise to you, kind of out of nowhere reaction. Um, but it's something that I always kind of wanted to check out since reacting to the first season of the Netflix live action adaptation of Alice in Borderland. Because I knew there were three OVAs done on it, and I believe they take place within the first three games, which I believe are also the first three episodes of the Netflix series. So I know generally what happens here, so it's not fully blind, but I also don't know how this was adapted and how the live series was adapted. I don't know which one's more accurate to the original manga. I don't know which one is, in general, better. I don't know like how they compare at all. All I know is this is what we have. um, so, for those of you who don't know Alice in Borderland, it's an isekai. It's an isekai series, but also combined with a death game series. So that's pretty interesting right off the bat. There is the Netflix series, which currently has two seasons. I've seen up to season 2, episode 1 so far. I have not continued past that yet, even though I've wanted to. I just haven't gotten the time. But it's basically about a bunch of people who are seemingly transported to another world and have to take part in these death games to survive. Which is, it sounds a little like contradictory, but that's kind of the point. So, I know nothing about this adaptation. I don't know who, like what studio adapted it. I don't know voice actors or anything. I don't know what it looks like at all. Um, I just know that it's a thing. I don't even know if there's a dub. I assume I have the Japanese version. I wasn't looking for a dub. And I didn't see anything about that. But yeah. Again, I know the general story, but I don't know how well the live series adapted the manga, so this might be quite a bit different in some ways. Um, but this is definitely something that I just decided to kind of do for fun. And I know today we already reacted to the likes of the Owl House and Symphogear, so it's like we're just having a trifecta of depression and trauma. It's like three series that touch on those topics pretty notably. um, but yeah, so and two of those series dealing with end of the world scenarios. At least Symphogear hasn't been doing that yet. It probably will, but obviously no spoilers for any of that. But yeah. So we're just gonna get into this and hope for the best. Um, I'll probably talk through like what I know and everything as we go and all. I'll mention names and everything, and I'll obviously point out some differences and stuff. Um, but yeah, it's going to be a really interesting ride, and I'm definitely interested to see how certain things are done compared to the live action series, especially these games. Because if these are the three starting games, then I know exactly what's going to happen in them. And I'm very interested to see how some of the characters are portrayed comparatively. Because again, I don't know all the differences from the live action series to the source material. There's a lot of things that might have been done differently, and I just don't know. But yeah, let's get this going and well, find out maybe. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then it fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the OVAs. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, there are some notable differences here in the OVAs compared to the live series. Um, One big notable difference is it's a lot more rushed, and I don't know if this is just because these are half or 22-minute episodes rather than the hour-long episodes of the live series. Um, and I don't know how it was done in the manga. I don't know how the manga handled that, but in the live series, there are a lot longer episodes, and there's a lot more time to like kind of build everything up. In the first place, the first episode kind of really just sends them off into the borderland, like in this version. But in the live series, we get to spend a lot more time with them first. We get to learn about their personalities, their character, a lot more about what their home life is like. It allows us to care about the characters a lot more. Here, it's like we don't really get that. We don't really have a lot of depth to them because we don't have the time to build that up. They're just kind of thrust into it. The first game is also very different. Like I mentioned, in the live series, the first game, they go into a hotel building, right? And there's 5 of them. There's Arisu, Chota, Karube, Shibuki, and then another girl. There's another girl. So they go into they start the game, they go into this room. The room is empty and it has 2 doors. One is a good door and one is a bad door. The thing is, you don't know which door is which, and the doors have, like, one of them has an anime girl, one has, like, a devil, but that could be tricking you. So you don't know which one's actually the good and which one's the bad. And so Arisu and them had to try and figure it out. And the one nameless girl just kind of died when she just kind of took a risk. So the rest of them had to try to make their way around. And eventually Arisu realized, oh, I can tell by the shape of the apartment building how each room is going to connect to the other. And so they figure it out through that and eventually escape, at which point they get their card, they get their visa, and they see the guy give up on his visa time and end up getting shot by the laser from space. In this, instead, they're in this festival ground, and they get locked into the festival ground to where if they try to escape, they're killed. And here they have to pull these fortune slips, which I know are a big thing for festivals in Japan. I've seen it in a lot of different anime and whatnot. And they have to solve the question on their slips. And the better fortune their slip gives has the easier questions. The worse fortune, the harder questions. And if you get the question wrong, it's a math problem. If you get the question wrong, a number of flaming arrows are shot towards you that equate to the difference between your answer and the correct answer. So if the correct answer is 5 and your answer is 10, that would be 5 points of difference, so a 5-arrow firing. And Arisu eventually figures out that there's a trick in the wording on the slips that allows him to figure out that the arrows would keep coming from subsequently different directions each time, just going in order, and that their goal wasn't to just, like, solve the problems and everything. It was to, actually escape and find the escape hatch, which they do find. They're able to escape, though Chota is injured. It's very different. Chota is injured in the first game in the live series, but it's done with fire, but it's different still. It's still very different in how it's handled. And of course, they do see the guy who gives up on his visa and is killed by the laser from space, that is still the same, even if the laser is much more intense in this version. Like, shaking the building and everything, and it's like, Jesus, fuck, that was heavy. In the live series, it's just like, quick little laser, boop, killed, dead. It's still freaky as hell. It's still scary, but it's not as hardcore, I guess you could say. Um, the second game was almost exactly the same. The biggest difference with the second game was that there was a lot less players, and they didn't have the twist of a second tagger. Um, which I could see that could have been a change that they made for the live series. I could see that, like, as a way to extend it a little bit. Introducing a second tagger would be an interesting idea. There's also characters who just were not in there, who were in there in the live series. In the live series, there's a character named Aguni who is very important later on, especially in regards to the beach. We hear about the beach through the radio in this, and Arisu learns about it a little differently in the live series, but the character Aguni is very important to that, and in the live series, this is where he first shows up. He's not here this time. I was thinking the one guy, the one tough guy, not the wrestler, the other one, I was thinking that was him, but apparently not, because he was shot to death. The only survivors of the game were Arisu, Karube, uh, Chishaya, and Usagi. There were only 4 survivors in the end. Everyone else ended up dying. Usagi survived due to her athletic skills and everything. Chishaya due to his mind, and Karube and Arisu due to basically just being survivors. Karube survived because he was tough and was playing it smart to a degree, and Arisu because he's the main character, let's be honest, and because he was solving how to actually do it and exactly where they needed to go, what they needed to do. Yeah, the buttons was definitely part of it as well in the live series, except they were on separate walls instead of like 2 podiums that were just too far apart. So it was a little more intense. And the tagger's head didn't explode like right when they pressed the buttons in the live series. It actually showed the tagger. Ahead, it showed the tagger unmasked, and it was this woman. At least that tagger was. And you got to like feel bad for her before her head exploded and everything. And it's like it was kind of just to showcase that, oh yeah, the taggers were players too. Like they weren't they weren't like robots or anything. They were players as well. So that's it was a lot darker, I feel, in the live series because of that. And again, there was a lot more time to kind of explore that, and while this was happening, Chota and Shibuki did sleep together in the live series instead of doing so after the fact in this version. And again, Shibuki's character was very different too, because in the live series she was using Chota, and she planned on betraying them, and only ended up, you know, agreeing to sacrifice herself in the end of the third game because Chota had stopped her from, you know, going after Arisu, and eventually she just kind of accepted it. She was in this version she's much more of a good person, I feel, than in the live action series. In this OVA and presumably the manga as well, she seems to actually be a lot more genuinely scared and not like a bad person at all. But in the live series, she's kind of a dick. She's kind of a bitch, if we're being honest. She makes the right call in the end, even though, again, Shota has to kind of force her into doing so. But yeah, and let's talk about that. Let's talk about the third game. Obviously, the worst of them. It's a hearts game. Hearts games fuck with you. They're not just psychological. They are meant to like cause betrayal and mess with your head, and just, you know, they're meant to fuck with your heart. And so this game was pretty much exactly like it is in the live series as well. You have the wolf and the sheep, and they have the headsets that transfer that power. And in the live series, they weren't as aggressively against each other. Like, they didn't turn against each other that aggressively. They did turn. They did start to turn on each other. They did start to have those problems. Um, but it wasn't as aggressive as this. Like, you don't see Karube like tackling Shibuki to the ground and like threatening to violently kill her and everything. And you don't see like them chasing after each other as heavily. It's not as violent. Um, but the ending is very much the same. Again, except for Shibuki just agreeing to kind of sacrifice herself. Um, they all agree to sacrifice themselves to allow Arisu to live, which fucks him up. Like, in the live series, he is out of commission for a lot longer. Like, he is just dead inside after this. It's not, Usagi does not come across him right away. It's quite a bit later. He's just been like not even responding to anything around him. He's just given up. He's not doing anything. He's laying around and just in a state of exceptional depression. And I think that's the biggest thing that the live series has over this. And again, I don't know if the manga is, if this is more accurate to the manga, where it's just like, go, 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 rush through everything, don't give time to breathe. I don't know if the manga is more like that, but the live series stretches things out. Again, the episodes are like more of an hour long, so you have a lot more to add depth to with each character and story and whatnot. Every game that they play, there's more to all of them. And so when you have this version where it's just rushing through it, I'm sorry, but their deaths there at the end of the third game wasn't that sad. Like, the only reason I even got a little sad was just because I know how it's done in the live series, and it was done so much better. If this was the first version I saw, I wouldn't have given a shit. Because honestly, it doesn't make you give a shit. It doesn't make you care about Karube, or Chota at all. Like, you just don't care for them. You don't have enough time to care for them. And it's not written in a way to where you can still care for them even in that little amount of time. There are some shows and whatnot where even with small amounts of time, you can start to care for the characters really quickly. This is not that kind of show. Because of all the shit going down, you don't get, you just, everything is distracting you from being able to connect with the characters. The only character you can slightly connect with is, ironically, Shibuki, the one who you couldn't connect with in the live series. She's the only one you can, because she's the only one who I feel was given enough depth in this version. Or at least enough likability. Because Arisu was given a little more depth than the others, but again, he wasn't one of the ones who died, so it wasn't as important to give him depth as it was the others in the situation, in the circumstance of specifically what was going on there. So yeah, it really sucks that it kind of just rushed through everything like that. And in that regard, I definitely have to give the live series the props. I think that it handled that better. The games themselves, again, the second and third game were pretty much exactly the same with just a couple tiny details different. Not really. I would say I guess I like them a little more in the live version just because they're there for longer, you know? There's a little more time to make them more interesting and more frightening. And the first games are so actively different. I think I like the live action versions better, the room choice game, rather than the slips. I just think it feels more intense and dire. It feels like, oh yeah, this is fucking scary. The slip game, it's like, oh yeah, the flaming arrows is fucking terrifying. But it doesn't feel as if there's a constant like time issue. With the going between the rooms, they had a time to figure everything out. Everything was timed, and it's like, oh, you have like 10 seconds to get this figured out. Obviously, it didn't start that low, but it's like you have 10 seconds to get this figured out. You just have to go. You don't have time to worry about it. Here, it felt like they were standing around and thinking for a lot longer, like even solving the problems. They didn't seem to have as much of a time crunch. Like it was mentioned, like, oh, if all the lanterns go out, it's yeah, there was a little bit of a time crunch, but it wasn't as dire. It didn't feel like as big of a deal. Um, and another thing to note is we did hear both the sub and the dub here because somehow I ended up accidentally downloading the dub of the second two episodes. That was completely unintentional, but we just went with it. And I don't have really a strong opinion on which is better. Um, Especially since knowing this is only 3 episodes for this OVA, it's like I don't really think it matters because it never continued past this. It's 3 episodes. It's like whatever. They're both fine. Whatever. um, but yeah, it's like that was just interesting to get to experience because I don't usually do that. I think I've done that like once or twice before, like in the all the time I've been reacting to where I've actually switched languages. One time was definitely Steins Gate Zero because I started watching that in the sub, but then they announced, oh, the dub is coming, by the way, and so I put it on hold. And it's like I'll just wait for the dub. Um, and then I don't remember what else there was. I think there was one more, maybe two, but unlikely. I think there was one more. You might know. I don't know, but yeah. And with the fact that this doesn't continue, I don't know. I just feel like kind of disappointed by that because it wasn't bad by any means. It's just it is the biggest issue is the pacing. It's just like balls to the wall, just so fast paced that it just doesn't give you time to take anything in. I don't mind that the characters are done a little differently and have slightly different personalities than in the live version. That doesn't bother me as much. But when it's so fast paced, it's like that will bother me because like starting to bond with and care about the characters is part of the experience that made the live series so good. When they die at the end of the third game, it matters because it's heartbreaking. It fucking made me cry hard. And here I didn't cry at all. Even though it was still sad, still tragic, it's like I didn't care about the characters except for maybe Shibuki and not even that much with her. Um but in the live version, I was excessively depressed over it and I was really fucking sad and God, it broke my heart. And we have other characters like Chishaya who is very much built up to be something. We have the entire thing with the beach that is set up, and it's like it never goes anywhere. It's like that's a little disappointing because it's like they never made any more, and I don't know why. I don't know if it was just not well received, and so they just stopped. Or hell, maybe it was around this time that they decided to start working on making a live action series and decided to like just throw this OVA series to the wayside. I don't know. But in general, it still gave a lot of the same feeling. Um, it still gave a lot of the general idea was still very much the same. It felt like the same series just told in a notably different way. And the opening, specifically how they get there, is probably one of the wildest changes to me. Because if this is accurate to the manga, it's like, that's very sudden. It's like what they think is a firework shoots off, explodes in the sky, it's way too big, way too explosive, and suddenly they're just teleported to the borderland. In the live series, the three are hanging out in Shibuya Station. They're dorking around, being dumbasses, and they run into the bathroom. They hide in a stall, just dorking around because they think they're going to get in trouble for being nuisances or something. And when all of a sudden the power in the bathroom goes out, they are confused and they leave only to find that literally everyone is gone from Shibuya, which doesn't happen. Shibuya is known for being packed. So when they leave and see just no one and nothing else around, no cars, no people, just everything, basically in the blink of an eye, in the snap of a finger, everything is gone. And it's like it's much more surprising that way. And I feel it comes across as a lot more confusing. Plus, in this version, they also just went to like looting and stuff really quickly. Here, they were just like confused and running around trying to figure out what the fuck was going on. The live version, I feel, just handled a lot of, again, that kind of goes with the pacing, a lot of that a lot better. And again, I don't know how the manga handles it. Maybe the manga is a lot more slow paced and maybe it handles it better in that regard. And maybe they just like quickened up the pacing for the OVA to make sure they got out like a game per episode. I don't know. But all I can say is I feel like I still prefer the live series. I feel like it just does enough better that it's more entertaining to me, and I care about the characters more in it. Also, just as a little note, this is like a non-issue, of course, but it's just something really interesting that I noticed. I know this was an anime OVA, and I know this is based on a manga, but the live series did not have as much fan service. At least within the course of these 3 episodes. Like, you get to see some, like, girls in bikinis and stuff later on, like at the beach and stuff, but, which isn't actually a beach, by the way. That's all I'll say. But you do get to see girls in bikinis and stuff. But, like, Shibuki was not this fan service. Like, she didn't have her tits all out everywhere in the live version. Like, that was definitely very different. And I chalk that, again, that's a non-issue. I chalk it up to just, manga and anime being horny. It wasn't an issue at all. It's just something I noticed. Because it's like, she was, like, attractive in the live series, but, like, she didn't have, like, massive-ass cleavage, and it's like when Karube's on top of her, like, pulling at her top to where it's like it shows off that cleavage exceptionally well, or when she's going towards Choda to have sex with him, like, you don't see, like, that big-ass cleavage shot that it made clear to show you. It's like, again, that's a non-issue. They're adults. Who gives a fuck? But at the same time, it's like, it's just really funny to me to see how different that feels with her character. Yeah, it just felt very different. But again, total non-issue. Just wanted to point it out because it was a little interesting. Excuse me. Take a drink of water real quick. But yeah, Yeah, I kind of wish this was continued though, because I feel like if this was continued and had more episodes, and at least even like a, if it were done like a full regular series rather than OVAs, I feel like it would have had the potential of being really well known and even well liked. I feel like people don't know about this as much as I feel they should. Um, and there's definitely a fan base for the live series, but it's again still just not as big as I think it should be. At least I from what I've seen. And maybe it would be better if if this had a full anime adaptation rather than just three OVAs, but I can't say for sure. I don't know like what people think of it. I don't know if people have read the manga. I don't know how obscure of a manga it is. I don't read manga, so, and I don't know how many people have seen the OVAs. So, I the thing is, I had never heard of this series ever before the live series came out. When the live series came out, it was brand new to me, and I didn't even know it was based off of manga at first. I thought it was just this original thing. I ended up finding out because I was looking it up after the. No, it wasn't after the first season ended. It was still during the season. I looked it up because I wanted to know like just a little bit more info, and yeah, I saw it was originally a manga, and that was like, oh, okay, neat. Um, at least I think that's how it happened. I don't think it said. I don't know if it says in the credits actually. Now I'm not sure. And if it did, I might not have seen it anyways, knowing me. I think I looked it up. I think that's how I found out. Um, but yeah, it's like I had never heard anyone talk about it. And so it's like once it started coming up, I started hearing people talk about the live series and everything, but then I never heard anyone talk about like any anime OVAs or anything. I only found out that was a thing again by looking up the information and just finding out that there was an OVA, a series of OVAs. So yeah, uh, that's a thing. Um, but yeah, I think I prefer the live series, but this was definitely a worthwhile watch. Um, and I hope you enjoyed. So tell me in the comments below, what do you think of these first, well, these only three OVA episodes of Alice in Borderland? Have you seen the live series? And if not, what's wrong with you? You should definitely see it. It's phenomenal. I still need to continue on with season two, and I have to stop procrastinating on that. Um, but yeah, you should definitely check it out. I definitely suggest it. Um, Even if just to see the notable differences between this these OVAs and the live series. Um, but for now, uh, yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say regarding this. Sorry for these afterthoughts being so long, but I had a lot to say because I am a fan of the live action show. So let me know down below, what did you think of this? And again, if you've seen the live series or not. And for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.